A soft pulse echoed through the void of space, unnoticed by most, but not by the sensors of Sentinel Theta 9, a lonely Imperial listening post stationed at the edge of the galaxy near the forgotten Sector Null. For centuries, the station had picked up nothing more than space debris, rogue signals, and harmless radiation. But today, the machines trembled as something massive stirred beyond known space. Technician Arlen Voss stared at the data feed, his heart beating faster with each impossible reading, gravitational ripples, silent energy flux, and a signature that moved against the laws of known propulsion. He called for the officer on duty, and soon alarms screamed as the anomaly grew larger, moving at speeds the Empire's best ships could never reach. When the High Marshal Virex received the report aboard the Imperial Command Station, he dismissed it at first. Errors, perhaps, a sensor malfunction. But then the readings arrived on the central display, an object the size of a capital city, moving faster than light without using warp lanes, emitting no heat, no visible thrust, and worse, disrupting every system that tried to scan it. A full blackout swept across Sentinel Theta 9 minutes later, its final broadcast repeating one message in a distorted voice: "Inbound, unknown, human." The room fell silent. The word human hadn't been heard in military circles for generations. According to Imperial archives, humanity had once expanded beyond their solar system centuries ago, but vanished without a trace after the first contact wars. Their homeworld Earth scorched, and their colonies silent. Most believed they were extinct, a victim of their own ambition. But the signal data suggested something else entirely: survival and evolution. Panic didn't come quickly in the Empire, but whispers rose among the command ranks. If the ship was truly human, how had they remained hidden? And how could a species once considered primitive return with such overwhelming power? As Virex ordered long-range interceptors to be launched, analysts dug into ancient files, breaking seals marked Strategic Threat Omega, revealing redacted mission logs and warnings written by admirals long dead. If they return, we must not provoke. But it was too late. The object was already inside Imperial territory, crossing planetary defense lines without resistance. Small defense drones were launched to test the ship's response. Each one vanished mid-flight, either deactivated or erased. No explosion, no trace, only silence. The Central Council convened in emergency session, each alien race represented with grim expressions, while intelligence officers presented what little they had: a shape unlike anything they'd seen, a black vessel, triangular yet smooth, cloaked in strange static as if space itself rejected showing its form. The first image of the object flickered on the chamber screen, and a murmur passed through the council. "That can't be real," one delegate whispered. "That can't be human." Yet the symbols on the ship's hull were unmistakable. An Ulteran flag faded but there. A voice transmission followed, brief and distorted, as if filtered through centuries of silence. "Terra returns." That night, as the Empire watched the stars in fear, no one slept easy. For the first time in thousands of years, the mightiest civilization in the galaxy felt powerless, and deep within the void, the unknown ship drifted ever closer, silent but unstoppable. And across every Imperial outpost, the same question echoed: what? If the humans never died out, what if they were waiting? The Imperial destroyer Irex's Fang cut through space like a dagger, heading straight toward the anomaly, now identified as a possible Terran vessel, though many on board refused to believe it. Commander Relandre stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the forward screen, where the object drifted in the distance, silent, cold, and too perfect. It didn't spin or pulse like a normal ship. It didn't flash lights or show heat. It just moved, slow and steady, ignoring every known law of physics. Scanners failed to penetrate its black surface. No energy signature could be read. All known communication protocols were sent. No reply. It was as if the ship didn't want to be seen or didn't care to respond. Some crew members whispered, the name Oblivion Star, taken from an old Terran myth about a doomsday ship. Others thought it was a ghost, a trick of light. But then the destroyer got close, too close, and everything changed. Without warning, the Irex's Fang lost power to its main guns. Shields dropped, engines slowed, alarms flashed, but there was no sign of attack. It was as if the ship's will had been removed. Commander Dre demanded answers, but the tech crew could only stammer, "It just stopped working." Panic began to spread, and then, as if waiting for the perfect moment, a single message came through. Not a file, not an image, just a voice. Calm, clear, and very human. "You are trespassing on Terran reclamation space. Stand down or be removed." The bridge fell silent. The voice was like a whisper from the past, yet it carried weight like thunder. Dre tried to respond, but his voice shook. "This is Imperial Destroyer Irex's Fang. Identify yourself." No reply came, only silence, followed by a low hum that filled every speaker on the ship. Lights flickered, gravity wobbled, and then the stars outside shifted slightly, not because the destroyer moved, but because space around the Terran vessel had warped. Something unnatural rippled around it, like water around a stone. It was not using warp drives. It was bending, space itself. Dre stared at the screen, heart pounding, as new data scrolled across the monitor. Mass estimates were rising. The object was growing, or revealing more of itself. What had first looked like a single ship now appeared to be only the front of something far larger, a structure stretching beyond the destroyer's scan range. It wasn't just a ship. It was a mobile fortress, maybe even a city. The crew scrambled to regain control, but nothing responded. No weapons, no movement. They were floating, helpless, in front of something beyond them. Dre ordered a retreat, but the engines only hummed and flickered. Just when fear reached its peak, the voice returned. "This is Admiral Marcus Vale of the Terran Continuum. You are not authorized to operate weapons within this sector. Your systems have been suspended. No harm will come to your crew. This is a warning." A name, Marcus Vale. The history files listed no such admiral, yet the name felt ancient and powerful, like it belonged in a forgotten legend. Dre stood frozen, unable to reply. Vale's voice continued, calm and commanding. "Your empire has strayed. We return not to conquer, but to observe. Terror watches." Then the signal vanished, and just as suddenly as they had failed, the destroyer's systems came back online. Lights returned, engines hummed, weapons glowed, though now clearly marked by warning signs flashing red. Dre stood in silence, shaken, as the Terran ship slowly turned away and vanished into deep space without using any known method of propulsion. No trace remained, no trail, no drive, no signature. It was as if the universe itself had allowed it to slip through untouched. As the destroyer limped back toward Imperial space, the crew spoke little. The story would spread quickly about the voice, the power, and the ship that broke all laws of science. When they reached command, their report was dismissed as error at first, until the logs were shown and replayed. The Council was notified, and for the first time in centuries, the Empire was not alone. At the top of the stars, something had returned from the void, and it had spoken with confidence. It didn't demand tribute. It didn't issue threats. It simply gave a warning. Now the question remained, was it the only one, or were more coming? In the heart of the Imperial throne world, deep inside the shining halls of the Skyglass Citadel, the Grand Galactic Council gathered in emergency session. their usual calm replaced by tension so thick it seemed to press against the walls themselves. The chamber, shaped like a giant dome with stars projected across the ceiling, was filled with the leaders of many alien races, each one representing a part of the mighty Galactic Empire. They had come together countless times to make decisions over war, trade, and control, but never had the air been so heavy with fear. The footage from the destroyer Irexa's Fang had been replayed over and over, each time more disturbing than the last. They all heard the voice, a human claiming to be Admiral Marcus Vale, speaking with perfect calm as he shut down one of the Empire's best warships without firing a single shot. They all saw the impossible ship drift away into the stars, breaking every rule of physics the Empire had ever known. Some council members believed it was a trick, a new weapon from a hidden enemy. Others knew better. Strategist Torkan of the Vurian Dominion stood and demanded action, shouting that a full fleet must be launched to destroy the ship and make an example. But the scientists in the chamber warned otherwise. The ship, whatever it was, had technology, far beyond anything the Empire possessed. No warp signature, no heat trail, no energy pulse. It had silenced an entire destroyer in seconds and left without harm. That kind of power could not be faked. The Emperor's top advisor, Lady Vasara, requested a review of ancient sealed archives long protected under the Omega Protocol. A quiet agent brought them in. Thick digital files marked with red warning signs, sealed away for over 500 years. As the Council watched the old reports, their expressions changed. The record spoke of early contact with humans. Brief, violent, and unsettling. Unlike other species, humans did not fear. They adapted. They changed too quickly. One record showed that early Terran colonies, when faced with destruction, evolved their technology in weeks, not decades. Another showed their ships resisting gravity fields and hacking into enemy systems through simple observation. One admiral from that era had written, "If they vanish, pray they do not return." The humans hadn't been defeated. They had simply left, vanished beyond mapped space after destroying their enemies or rendering them powerless. The Empire had assumed they collapsed, but now it seemed they had only gone into hiding, or perhaps something more. Whispers spread that humans had ascended, become something else, something greater. The idea caused unease, especially among the older races who had always seen humanity as wild, undisciplined, and dangerous. Now, they were silent, organized, and powerful. Fear took root in the chamber. Councillors argued, voices rising. Some demanded peace, others called for war, and a few, like Lord Commander Zekan, suggested finding the humans and begging for terms before things worsened. But no one knew where the ship had gone. It had vanished without a trace. A new report arrived in the chamber. Imperial sensors had picked up micro-disturbances in other sectors, space bending in the same way as near the Terran vessel. They were not alone. Other ships were arriving, smaller ones, some cloaked in strange energy, some simply appearing without warning. They did not attack. They only observed and watched, floating near defense stations, scanning planets from orbit, and then vanishing. One officer described it as feeling like being judged. Messages came from distant colonies, panic, fear, even desertion. People spoke of the humans as myths, ghosts, or gods. In some fringe systems, cults formed overnight, praising the return of terror. The Empire tried to block the transmissions, but it was too late. The idea had already spread. Across the stars, the question was no longer if the humans were back, but why. Back in the council chamber, the Emperor himself appeared through a towering hologram, his voice cold and sharp. He demanded answers. He demanded strength. But even he could not ignore the tension in the room. The Admiral of the Imperial Navy suggested preparing the Eclipse Protocol, the Empire's most powerful weapon, able to crack planets in half. Others hesitated, warning that provoking the humans might bring a worse response. One counselor, a small, wise creature named Mirren, whispered that perhaps the humans were not back for war, but for justice. Perhaps they had seen what the Empire had become, and now returned to correct it. Her voice was drowned by louder ones, calling for defense, for building more ships, for arming the core systems. The panic was spreading. The council broke into shouting once again, leaders forgetting alliances, history, and pride. Fear had done what no enemy ever could. It had fractured the core of the Empire. Meanwhile, in the dark void beyond the known, stars, another Terran vessel drifted past a hidden Imperial base. Its hull reflected no light. Its presence silenced all comms. It did nothing. It only watched. And as it vanished again into the black, a final message arrived at the Citadel. Short, simple, and terrifying. The Eye of Terror is open. In the vast archives of the Imperial Knowledge Vault, hidden beneath layers of encrypted stone and guarded by silence, Scholar Wren sat alone, eyes locked on flickering screens filled with ancient files. Files that hadn't been opened for centuries. The words echoed again and again across his mind. The Eye of Terror is open. That message had reached every outpost in the Empire within hours, though no known technology could transmit across such distances so quickly. Wren, one of the Empire's top historians, had been summoned by the Emperor's personal order, not to give speeches or theories, but to find out what humanity truly was. Not what the Empire taught, not the old battle records or propaganda, but the truth. And the truth was stranger than any fiction the Empire had ever imagined. As Wren read through the files, unease crept into his bones. The Terrans had never been ordinary. According to early records, before the First Contact Wars, they were a species that evolved faster than any known race, not just physically but mentally. They could learn alien languages in days, reverse engineer captured technology in weeks, and adapt to new environments in mere hours. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and brilliant. The Empire once believed that was their weakness. But what Wren now saw in the forbidden texts suggested otherwise. Their chaos was not a flaw, it was a survival tool. When the war between the early Empire and Terra began, the humans lost many battles. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but each time they came back stronger, faster, smarter. The war logs showed Imperial fleets destroyed by tactics never used before. One file described a Terran ship using its own wreckage as a weapon, slingshotting debris at impossible angles to destroy cruisers. Another told of a colony that rerouted volcanic flows to power makeshift planetary defenses. They didn't fight like anyone else. They fought as if they understood the enemy better than the enemy understood themselves. Then, one day, they vanished. No retreat, no surrender. Entire fleets turned away, colonies shut off their signals, ships went dark. It was as if they had chosen to disappear. But Wren now understood. It was not a retreat. It was a step back to prepare, a reset. And now, they had returned, not to fight, but to observe, to watch. And that was what frightened the Empire more than any weapon. Out among the stars, more of the Terran ships had begun to appear, each one different in design, some elegant, others dark and sharp, some resembling ancient Earth myths, like dragons or birds of prey. Yet none attacked. They simply hovered above planets or drifted beside defense fleets, untouched by any known scan. Attempts to follow them always failed. Pursuing ships lost power, tracking probes disappeared. It was as if the Terran vessels lived slightly outside of reality, brushing against it only when they chose to. On one world, a Terran ship descended, near a ruined human colony, long thought abandoned. When Imperial drones approached, they were allowed to scan, to record. The ship opened briefly, revealing lush gardens inside, filled with earth plants thought extinct. One camera caught a glimpse of a figure tall, armored in glowing silver with eyes like fire. The image disappeared a second later, wiped clean, but the message was clear. Humanity had not just survived, they had thrived, they had rebuilt, they had become something greater. On the throne world, fear had turned into silence. The council no longer argued, the military leaders no longer shouted. Even the emperor had grown quiet, sitting in deep thought as reports piled higher each day. Some in the empire believed the humans were testing them, judging if the galaxy was worth saving. Others believed they were scouts for a much larger return. The only thing no one believed anymore was that this was a misunderstanding. The Terrans had come back with purpose. Scholar Wren was summoned once again, this time to stand before the council and speak. He walked slowly through the halls, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on his shoulders. When he entered the chamber, every eye turned to him. The Emperor's voice was calm. "Tell us what they are." Wren swallowed and answered simply, "They are what we feared they could become. They are not just humans. They are a people shaped by fire, silence and time. They are no longer what they were, and they are watching." A long pause followed. Then the Admiral of the Navy whispered, "Can we fight them?" Wren looked down and replied, "We do not understand them. How can we fight what we do not understand?" Outside the chamber, news spread of another event, this one even stranger. On a border world under Imperial rule, a Terran ship landed silently. No weapons were raised. Instead, a single human stepped out, unarmed, and spoke to the people. He did not speak of war, he spoke of truth. He told them what happened to Terra, of the fall, the retreat, the centuries of silence spent in the void, and the rise of the continuum. He offered no demands, only a single choice. "You may continue your path," he said, "or you may witness ours." Then he left, and the people remembered his words more than his face. Across the stars, some began to listen. The Empire trembled, not from the sound of cannons or the sight of fleets, but from the realization that the humans had come not to destroy the Empire, but to make it question itself. And that, perhaps, was the most powerful weapon of all. The throne world of the Galactic Empire, once the center of power and pride, now trembled under the weight of fear that grew heavier each passing hour, a fear that reached into every corner of the shining city and whispered into the ears of even the most loyal citizens. Tall spires that once touched the clouds now looked like hollow monuments to a forgotten certainty, and the golden banners that waved in the eternal wind no longer felt like symbols of strength, but like empty cloth fluttering against the unknown. Inside the sky-glass citadel, where the council once ruled with clear voices and hard decisions, silence stretched long between meetings, and whispers filled the gaps where once thunderous speeches echoed. The return of the Terrans had changed everything. It was not only the council or the generals who felt it now, it was everyone. Merchants lowered their voices when speaking of news from the border systems. Children no longer played in the great echo halls without glancing up at the sky. Even the high-born nobles who once laughed at fear began building bunkers under their mansions. Fear had become the new language of the Empire, and it spoke with a cold voice. Reports kept coming in from deep space, ships that blinked in and out without warning, colonies that saw flashes of light followed by silence, Imperial probes that vanished mid-transmission, and strange messages that repeated themselves on open channels. Terra sees, Terra knows. No one could trace the source, and nothing could stop the signal. The Emperor, once a man known for his iron will, now held private meetings in shadowed rooms and ordered scans on his own guards. He spoke less each day, and those who met his gaze said his eyes no longer held command, but worry. In the streets, citizens began to question everything. Holoscreens showed edited news, but the people were not fools. They knew something was wrong. Secretly, some watched the captured footage of Terran ships, smooth, dark shapes gliding silently through the void, untouched by weapons or logic. Others spoke of the human who landed on the border world and left with no guard, no threat, Just words that lingered like smoke. You may witness. That word, witness, was being carved into walls, whispered in dark corners, and painted in glowing red over imperial recruitment posters. Something had shifted in the hearts of the people. Not full rebellion, but doubt, and in an empire built on control, doubt was poison. The council tried to restore order, ordering parades and security drills, but none of it mattered. The parades felt forced. The soldiers marched without purpose. Fear could not be erased by music or banners. One night, a strange event shook the throne world itself. Without warning, the stars above the palace shifted, not moved but turned, like a great mirror had been placed over the sky. For 1 minute, every sensor on the planet shut down. Every screen went dark, every light dimmed. People stared upward, unsure if it was a dream or a sign. And then the stars returned, exactly as they were, but different somehow, sharper, watching. Scientists called it a glitch, but even they did not believe their own words. That same night, an elite guard patrolling the top of the Skyglass Tower disappeared. Only his weapon remained, floating mid-air for several seconds before falling. Security footage cut out exactly 3 seconds before. No sign of struggle, no trace of sound, just gone. Fear deepened. The Emperor summoned Scholar Wren again, desperate for answers. Wren had spent days reviewing more Terran records, ancient logs, hidden so deep they had no names. He now believed the Terrans had not just advanced, they had transcended something. He stood before the Emperor, voice low and steady. "They are not just visitors, they are reminders," he said. "Reminders of what we once feared and chose to forget." The Emperor asked what they wanted. Wren replied, "To be seen, to see us, to understand if we are worthy of their silence." That answer chilled the room. Outside, the city began locking down. Patrols increased, checkpoints grew, but none. It stopped the sense that eyes were everywhere, watching from beyond the stars. Some claimed they saw shadowy shapes drifting between buildings at night. Others swore they heard strange whispers through their comms when no one else was there. One pilot, flying a patrol above the palace, screamed into his headset that a Terran ship was beside him, matching his speed without being seen on radar. He never returned to base. His ship floated back on autopilot, empty. The Empire's grip tightened, but control slipped like sand between fingers. Fear had rooted itself too deep. Even the military felt it. Young soldiers trained in virtual war rooms found themselves hesitating, asking if their weapons would even work if the humans ever chose to attack. Their instructors had no answer. On the 6th day after the last Terran appearance, a new message arrived. This time, it came not through screens or comms, but through dreams. People across the throne world woke up speaking the same words. "We remember who we are. Do you?" Doctors tried to explain it as a mass mental reaction, a shared illusion. But when the Emperor himself repeated the phrase in his sleep, no one dared call it false. The council met again, but now there were no speeches, only silence. They all knew the truth. The Terrans had returned not with ships of war, but with a force no empire could stop. Doubt, memory, and the question of worth. The Empire had ruled. For centuries, through fear, order, and control. But now fear belonged to the people, and order was cracking, and control was being watched. In the highest chamber of the Skyglass Citadel, the Emperor stood alone before the great window, staring into the stars. And for the first time in his rule, he whispered not a command, but a question. "What do they want from us?" The stars gave no answer, but somewhere beyond them, terror waited, watching, always watching. The return of terror was not marked by war, not by fleets descending in fire or weapons lighting the skies. It began with silence, deep and heavy, stretching across the stars, like a held breath, and it reached every corner of the Galactic Empire in a way that no enemy ever had, not with destruction, but with presence. An undeniable truth pressing into every mind that tried to deny it, a quiet force that said, "We are here." And the empire, which had ruled for thousands of years, now trembled like a candle in the wind of something older, colder, and far wiser. Ships that defied scanners began to appear above major imperial worlds, not to attack but to hover, still and watching, each one shaped differently, some like ancient Terran myths, some like flowing silver wings, others like blades of light, but none showing any sign of weakness. None answering hails, none reacting to threats as if they existed beyond the reach of empire laws, technology, or fear. On the throne world, panic lived in every hallway now, with guards whispering of dreams that weren't their own, of messages that came without sound or code, and of faces that appeared in the reflections of glass just for a second. Faces human, but not quite, something more. The Emperor no longer spoke in public, locked away in the Skyglass Tower, and even his own advisors weren't sure what he was thinking, only that he had ordered every remaining fleet to remain docked, every weapon system to stand down, not out of peace, but out of confusion, because how do you fight something that won't fight back? On the sixth night, a new Terran ship entered orbit above the throne world, larger than anything seen before, shaped like a ring wrapped in flame, slowly rotating with an unnatural calm. And then, without warning, it opened, not in a mechanical way, but like space itself parted, and from it descended a single craft, small, dark and silent, landing in the middle of the Emperor's central court, without being stopped, without being challenged, as if every system had simply let it happen. From the craft stepped a single human, tall, dressed not in armor, but in simple black fabric that shimmered slightly in the light. And with no guards, no translator, he walked forward into the heart of the Empire, where hundreds waited. Soldiers, counselors, nobles, and Ren the scholar, all of them silent, afraid, unsure whether to flee, fight, or fall to their knees. The man stopped in the center of the chamber, and his voice, clear and steady, reached every ear. Not loud, but final. "We are terror, and we remember." No one moved. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. And then Scholar Ren stepped forward, the only one who seemed unafraid, though his hands trembled, and he asked the only question that mattered. "Why have you returned?" The Terran's eyes glowed with a quiet fire, not of rage, but of memory. "To see," he said, "to understand what the Empire has become, to decide." The word hung in the air. Decide what? No one dared ask. The Terran raised his hand, and for a moment the chamber shifted. Reality bent, and images filled the air. Scenes of terror, not as it once was, but as it had become. Towers of living light, cities grown from stone and thought, people walking through stars, children shaping energy with their hands, and the sky filled with ships that moved through folds in space as if walking through a door. Terror had not simply returned, it had evolved beyond war, beyond hunger, beyond fear. And now it looked back at the galaxy that once tried to destroy it, not with vengeance, but with judgment. "You feared what we could become," the Terran said, "and so you tried to erase us. But we do not forget. We watched, we learned, and now we ask, not with weapons but with truth. Do you still believe you are worthy to lead?" The council stood frozen, and for the first time one of them, Councillor Vereen, a woman known for her pride and cruelty, stepped forward, eyes hard. "What if we say no?" she said, her voice sharp like a blade. "What if we refuse your judgment?" The Terran did not blink. "Then you continue as you are, but know this, our silence will end. Others will follow us, and they will not come to speak." A cold wind seemed to pass through the chamber, though all doors were shut. Councillor Vereen stepped back. The message was clear. The Empire stood at a crossroad. The people outside already felt it. Across the stars, Terran ships had begun visiting not just capitals, but outer colonies, forgotten mining towns, ruined war zones, and each time they offered no orders, no threats, only the same words. "We remember who we are. Do you?" And each time, people listened. Some followed, some turned away from the Empire quietly. On the edge of the galaxy, a small Imperial garrison laid down its arms and welcomed the Terrans. Not to join them, but to listen. That was all it took. A crack in the wall, a whisper through the system. One by one, the people began to shift, not in rebellion, but in thought. And the Empire, so used to ruling through fear, found that fear was no longer enough. On the final day, the Terran ambassador met the Emperor at last, in private, face-to-face. No record was kept of what was said, but when the Emperor emerged, he looked older, his face lined with something deeper than time. He walked to the central balcony, looked over his silent world, and spoke only once. "Perhaps it is not we who rule the stars, but the stars who now rule us." Then he turned and walked away. That evening, the Terran ships left as quietly as they had come, slipping through space like shadows returning to light. They left no damage, no demands, no promises, but they left something far greater, an idea, and that idea spread faster than any fleet. Across the Empire, people began to question, not in anger but in wonder. What if the future did not belong to those who controlled, but to those who remembered? What if the strength of terror was not its power, but its patience? The Empire had witnessed the return of terror, and it would never be the same. Because now, across every system, every station, every mind, a single thought echoed louder than any order, stronger than any fear. They came back, and they chose to let us decide.